So today in InDesign, we're going to be covering how to make a template, and we're going to use this mock-up design as a basis for our template. Now this can be applied to any design, whether it be a magazine, poster, annual report, program, brochure, not just limited to this trifold brochure design. So to get started, I'm going to simply pull this to the side. Now the importance of doing a template is you can hash out the idea, or a visual sketch, I call it. Instead of sketching it out, you can kind of hash out where you want things to go and place things in to see how the flow works without necessarily having the content ready to go. Because oftentimes in dealing with clients, the content on their end is what takes the longest in the design process, not necessarily you doing the actual design yourself. So, in order to set up a template, we're going to be using the text boxes, the shape tool, the rectangle frame tool, and placeholder text, and a tint color. So, based on this here, remember, like in the first tutorial, how to set up this document, this right panel is the first page. Now I know on the mock we can barely see the inside flap, so we're just going to guesstimate, use our own creative liberties to design the back and inside flap. So that being said, we're going to click on the rectangle frame tool first, which is the keyboard shortcut F. It is the box with the X on it. Now remember, when you're designing in InDesign, you want to make sure that you have your bleeds active like we set up in the first tutorial. But that also means your images need to stretch, or anything that goes to the edge of the page needs to stretch to the bleed section. So I'm going to click on my rectangle frame tool, drag it out, and now I'm going to end it, even though initially it's going to be to the edge of the page. But remember, the bleeds is what helps the printer dictate if the paper shifts in the printer. It's still going to have that information there to print instead of it just being a blank space on the design. So we're going to use the rectangle tool now. Keyboard shortcut M. Now the same thing, because this bleeds to the edge, we need to make sure that we have it going to the bleeds. So now zooming in a bit, we want to make sure that these are butted up against each other. So now, looking at this, we have our properties panel here, or at the top. Now with the swatches, now because we're going to choose a custom swatch, we can simply do this with the eyedropper tool in InDesign. Allows you to create a color scheme or theme based on the colors that are inside of the image. So in this case, click on color theme tool, and then now we're going to simply sample this color. And as you can see, it grabbed some of the colors that are in the document. To me, it's not as accurate as it could be, because I would have rather grabbed this darker brown. But if you click on this arrow here, it then gives you alternative options, whether it be muted, deep, dark, bright. So I'm going to go with a dark theme, which does then grab that darker brown. So in this instance, I'm click on the red, and I'm going to drop it here. Now, if I were to choose a different color, I can simply click on the color and then drop it here again. So because it's the shape tool, we just dropped in the color. So now for the rectangle frame tool. Now traditionally, if you were to hit W, which is the keyboard shortcut to do a preview, it does not show because it is going to be hidden, because it's really a placeholder for an image. So in order to still see it when you preview it, you can simply click on the fill and then go to blue and then lower the tint to say 10%, so that when you hit W and preview it, you can still see that this blue area, light blue area, is going to be where the images go. So just to continue along, we're going to also use a rectangle frame tool for the placeholder area for the logo at the top. So because it's going to be not in the margins, so because I want to keep this in the margins, I don't have to go to the edge of the page. But then also I can hit eyedropper tool and then sample a color, so that then now it's going to sample this color as well. So you want to draw out a rectangle tool again, and then go into your swatch panel. We can make it white, and we can turn off the stroke by clicking on the stroke icon and go into none. And then now, similar to how the design looks, we can do another rectangle, but this time with the text box in it. So rectangle, using the margins, within the margins. And then again, we're going to use the eyedropper tool to sample the red. And then also turn off the stroke. And then T for text box. Now when the text box is inside a shape, you want to make sure you don't just click and let go. You have to click and drag. Because when you click and let go, it automatically turns the shape into a text box. But we want to put a text box in the shape. So I want to click and drag out the text box, like so. And then now for placeholder text, you can simply go to type and go down to fill with placeholder text as a temporary placeholder for the text. Now zooming out. Now again, we can't see the back, so we're just going to guesstimate the design, but we can see the inside flap, which is the alternative of the cover, to where we have the image at the top and then text at the bottom. So going to the back panel, now remember the inside flap is going to be designed on the far left panel. So I'm going to click on this, draw out a large rectangle frame tool. Then eyedropper, keyboard shortcut I, sample that color. And then rectangle tool. Again, from bleed to column. And then eyedropper tool, sample the red. And then now, instead, I'm just going to simply click on this rectangle here. And I'm going to hold the Alt key. Much like in Illustrator or Photoshop, the Alt key is the quick copy tool. So I'm just going to quickly copy because I want the same exact width and height on this one. And then now, since we copied it from a pre-made shape, it's technically underneath, so we can press Control-Shift left bracket or Control-Shift right bracket. Bring to front, send to back. Make it one big rectangle, solid color. And then let's do a placeholder text here. So type fill with placeholder text. And say a space at the bottom using the rectangle tool for, say, 2 logos. Again, using the columns as reference. So again, eyedropper tool, sample that. Okay. Now when it comes to template creation, you can also use the image reference point. So for example, if we were to hit W, we can check and see, okay, we have a stroke, so turn off the stroke on each of these. And then make sure that everything is butted up against the corners. So now going to the back side, I'm going to simply click and drag down my reference image so that we can mirror the back. Now the back is pretty much the same thing. It's going to be alternating images and text boxes. So again, I can go ahead and do the rectangle frame tool. And again, click on the sample, make it 10%. Making sure that it's the fill, not the stroke. So then now I'm going to simply Alt and copy it over once. and then Alt, drag it up, copy it up once. So now I have all my images set, so now I can simply go in and then add the rectangle frame tools. So now I can go in and add the rectangle tools. So making sure my fill is active. So now I can go in and make my rectangle tools. Then give it a temporary color. So again, Alt, copy it over. Now in this instance, since this center one is the same color, we can simply Alt and drag it over. Again, making sure that it fits within the page, because you don't have to account for the bleed on the side for this one. And we can simply drag it all the way down. And then Control Shift left bracket, send to back, instead of having to make two separate rectangles for this. So now to add the color, we can simply go to our eyedropper tool, which is set to the color theme tool. And then I'm going to simply click on the red, drop in that color. So I'm gonna click on the red, drop in. So now my eyedrop, so now the color theme tool, I'm going to drop in the color on each of these rectangles. Turn it to the red. There we go. And then now using the rectangle tool again, making sure the fill is set to white, we're going to draw out the rectangles. So now technically, since this rectangle will go all the way through each one, we can simply draw out a rectangle the entire width of the document. Give it a fill. So now I'm going to make the one rectangle, so I'm simply going to drag this up using the Alt key, put it in position, and then using the bracket to bring it in from the left and bring it in from the right. And then now for the text boxes, again, text boxes tend to stay inside of the margins. And then type, fill with placeholder text. And now we can simply convert it to white, since more or less likely that's going to be the color. And then put one more place for a small logo. Eyedropper tool. So this is how you can create a design template without the content